Thanks for joining me, Augusta, for a special edition of Kim's Corner Plug on Politics. Today's guest is Senator Hardy Davis of District 22. Stay with us. So, Senator Davis, tell me about what it feels like being a senator.
Well, this is my third year being the senator for the 22nd District. I'm excited to be able to represent the citizens of Augusta. I've been in the legislature 6 years now, and having served initially 3 years in the House of Representatives and now in the Senate, I certainly enjoy being in the Senate more than I do or did serving in the House of Representatives. And it's given me a unique perspective. I've always been a problem solver, and so it's given me an opportunity to help people in another capacity of my life be able to solve problems, real world problems that people are facing every day, whether they're family issues, whether they're children issues, education issues, or even some of the things that we are faced with in this community in a very present way, such as private probation, things like that. But then, of course, some of the juicy things that I really enjoy are opportunities to spur economic growth in our community with things that we're doing from a legislative perspective. And so it's given me a unique perspective to see how best to solve the problems of people every day. I spent 17 and a half years prior to this as an electrical engineer, where again I solved problems as well. And so those opportunities and those what we would call career paths have given me a broader perspective on what marketplace issues really are, and then being able to leverage those from a legislative perspective have, I believe, been very useful to me and certainly to, I hope, the citizens of Augusta and the great state of Georgia.
Yes, I'd like to know if there's one person that you can say inspired you to become a problem solver and to have the level of motivation and drive that led you to seek this type of office. Who would you say?
Well, I think that when I look back over my life, my parents have always been extremely instrumental in anything that I've done. I come from a two-parent home. My dad and my mom were high school graduates, but they raised 4 children who they put through college. And they've always been very passionate about wanting us to succeed and certainly to accomplish greater things than they did in their lives. And so my dad, his work ethic is what fuels me every day. Seeing him as a young child and then getting an opportunity to work alongside him as I grew older, those are the things that caused me to be passionate about everything that I do. My dad is a problem solver as well, and my mom also, but they also are very people-centric. They have been in the business of helping people throughout my short life, and certainly as I've watched them over the years, and I think that's the thing that's motivated me and spurred me, and certainly my siblings as well, to be involved in public service and to be engaged in helping people.
And are you passing that along to your son?
I am. In fact, he thinks that he's a senator sometimes, when it's convenient for him, of course. But he is someone who is also very passionate about helping people at 10 years old, and you know, he can choose what he wants to do. One of the things that I've always told him, though, is that one thing that he does not choose is he'll go to Georgia Tech just like his dad did. Anything else, you know, I work with. You know.
That's funny. I was actually viewing your website, and I like to, you know, make sure that we in Augusta are able to check out the Senator's website. We'll have that on the air for you at a later time. But I was viewing your website, and I looked at the different things that, you know, you're working passionately for, and you really actually do help people. And that's one thing that I really like about you. I've had the opportunity and the blessing for you to have assisted me in some of my issues with my disabilities and health issues. So, you know, I want to take this opportunity to thank you personally on the air for everything that you and your office have done. And I think what you do for the community as a whole. Sometimes we, as a public or a community, don't tend to recognize when someone is actually doing good. We remember the things that go wrong, you know, and we highlight those things and we talk about those things. But what about the positive people? What about the people who are doing good?
Yeah, so, I think we live in a society that the reality of it is we're a society of sound bites and rhetoric.
Right.
We hear what's said on CNN or Fox or any of those major media outlets, and we tend to gravitate towards those. We repeat those things that we hear and that we have seen, and we may not have any specific reference to those things ourselves. But what I've done in my life is, again, look for opportunities to help people, to be transparent, to be honest, to be a person of integrity and character, and be willing to tell people that I believe I can help you with this when people call our office. And when there are those times where I don't think that there's anything we can get done, I'm at least willing to let people know that up front. And I think that makes my job easier, as opposed to being in a position of influence and giving people the perception and or intimating that you can do anything.
Right.
I think that gets people in trouble. And I would prefer not to operate from that perspective, but rather say, well, let us look into it and we'll get back to you. And again, you were gracious enough to reach out to our office to help, and you know, thank God we were able to do something.
Yeah. Okay, so another question. This one is, you are a pastor.
I am.
Tell me about the influence that has on you, as well as being a senator and a pastor.
Well, I think it gives me an opportunity to see things again from a holistic perspective. Many of my colleagues in the General Assembly, they only know that I'm a pastor now. They forget that I'm an engineer, and that has a way of sneaking up on people.
Okay.
Where, you know, the perceptions of, well, you know, all he talks about is the Bible, blah, blah, blah. I never operate from that perspective.
Okay.
But being a pastor, it allows me to have the compassion of Jesus when we're dealing with these issues, whether it's an economic issue, whether it is a social issue, but to be able to look at it from a holistic perspective as opposed to the letter of the law. Or even if we're crafting new laws, but to be able to look at it. Most of the things that we deal with from a legislative perspective are in fact kitchen table issues. They're the things that people deal with every single day of their lives, and I've always adopted the position that there are no black or white issues. There are only people issues.
That's right.
And at the end of the day, regardless of what ethnic community we've come from, we all want the same thing. We not only want the same things, but the challenges of life are predicated around how best to solve those problems. We want the same thing. We want good jobs. We want schools that are representative of the communities that allow our children to be educated. We want to have a good living. We want to be able to work and play in nice communities. Everyone wants that. And so I think being a pastor affords me that opportunity to have a clearer lens than some other people when it comes to dealing with those issues.
That's I'm just in awe. I'm quite sure some of you may be feeling the same way, because I've never had the opportunity to actually sit down and speak with someone on this level who's also a real person and really understands the people. So I hope you're still enjoying the show, everybody, but we're going to start to talk about, I'd like to bring up first maybe healthcare. And see where we go with that. I know that that's something that you are passionate about, and that you've been fighting for Peach Care and Medicare and extending the eligibility of those two. Can you tell me something about that?
I can speak to that. I'm very passionate about the issues associated with health care. When I first ran in 2006 for the House of Representatives, there were 1.2 million Georgians who were underinsured or uninsured. That number swelled to roughly about 1.5 million Georgians who have no health care at all. And we're very proud of the good work that our colleagues in Washington have done, independent of what political stripes people have. At the end of the day, these are people issues. We live in the most powerful, wealthiest country in the world, and I visited several countries, had the great opportunity and fortune to travel outside of America. And when we look at countries who do not have the stature of America, who have universal health care, or at least the access to it, as well as a private provider system, and to see America, and certainly in Georgia, for us to struggle with lifting that and providing opportunity to all of our citizens, I think does our community, and certainly the state of Georgia and America, disservice. So I've been very passionate passionate about that. In 2008, my second year in the legislature, we were very fortunate to be able to expand the Peach Care rolls in Georgia. That was a bipartisan effort to in fact do that by expanding the poverty level in Georgia. And as we continue to move forward, as a result of the Affordable Care Act, and knowing that there are 30+ million Americans who do not have health care, we have opportunity in Georgia to create health care exchanges. I am, again, a very conservative person when it comes to fiscal issues. Okay. And so we have an opportunity through health care exchanges across state lines to be able to provide access to health care that historically had not been available in Georgia. And then, of course, with what's available through the Affordable Care Act, to be able to expand the Medicaid rolls here in Georgia and thus Peach Care. And so I think we have a unique opportunity in the days ahead where we're going to see people who have been left off of the healthcare rolls get opportunity and access. The reality of it is, when people go through the emergency room, it's more expensive. Yes. But if we provide a system of care and a safety net for people who historically have not had it, we can in fact drive costs down and create a competitive environment for people to be able to participate in that. And that's what I'm all for. And it gives people a standard of living that many times they do not have.
Now, for some people who may not be very familiar with exactly what Peach Care is, could you tell us that? Peach
Care is Georgia's opportunity to provide insurance for children, but also for parents of children who otherwise could not, in fact, be able to afford it. I believe the income cap on that is about parents who make at or less than $50,000 now, who have access to it, and certainly those individuals who cannot afford to insure their children, they can in fact enroll their children provided they meet the income eligibility rules and provide insurance for their children. And it's an extremely popular program. It is a program that's available not just in Georgia, but in other states as well. It's the what we call an SCHIP, State Child Health Care program. And so it becomes available for folks who, again, meet those income eligibility rules.
So if somebody wanted to know how to, would they go to Department of Family and Children Services, a local DFACS office?
They can, in fact, go to their local Department of Family and Children Services. The name has changed now, but again, if you look up that, you can still reach them. You can go there. You can go to the Department of Community Affairs. Here, you can go to their website. In fact, one of the most important sites that we have available in Georgia is to go to georgia.gov. If you go to that website, georgia.gov, it provides you with access to all of those agencies that we have in the state of Georgia: the Department of Human Services, the Department of Community Affairs, the Department of Family and Child Services. Again, it's a different name now, but you can access that through that georgia.gov website.
Okay. And I think it's also on your website as well. It is. If you visit Senator Hardy Davis's website, it's also there. He has actually everything listed that he is passionate about.
Yeah.
Now, when we talk about, I want to go back to Medicare.
Sure.
Okay. And Medicaid. Basically, what is the difference in Medicare versus Medicaid?
Right. When you look at Medicare and Medicaid, it's the federal program versus the state program.
Okay.
And what's important to understand is that when we talk about Medicare, in the state of Georgia, we're the recipients of the federal drawdown dollars. Medicaid, from a state perspective, that's the state's portion to that. And so it's important that people understand that there are two components to that. You want to be eligible for both of those when we talk about being recipients of those dollars, both the state portion and also the federal portion.
Okay.
One of the significant things that as we move forward in 2013 that will become extremely important is Medicare. One of the things that the Affordable Care Act provides is an opportunity for states who are willing to receive 100% of those dollars from the federal government and be able to use those and distribute that throughout the states. Is that in 2010 in the legislature, we imposed or passed legislation that hospitals and or doctors agreed to what we call the hospital bed tax. One of the things that it does, it was a 3-year tax and it sunsets in 2013. One of the things that as we move forward in 2013 is that as that sunsets, doctors and or hospitals will now be able to come back to the table to the legislature and say again whether or not they're willing to continue with that. It's significant as we move forward. We'll probably talk about this as we move forward, and that is what lies ahead for the state of Georgia, issues that affect us. And the whole Medicare issue is one that will in fact affect us as it relates to the hospital bed tax. It was a bed tax of about 1.45% that hospitals were willing to allow to be levied to the tune of roughly $230 million of revenue for the state of Georgia. As we moved to try to close the budget holes in the state of Georgia, that was one of the things that we did in an attempt to bring new revenue into the process. But in 2013, as it sunsets, essentially goes away, we still will have to fill that gap. One of the things that I anticipate doctors and or hospitals coming to the legislature and saying is that we're willing to continue that provided the state of Georgia does in fact draw down those dollars that are available as a result of the Affordable Care Act. And so there's a lot of things that are moving right now and movable parts, and so it'll be an interesting year in 2013.
Okay. Now with the Affordable Care Act, one more question regarding health care before we go to another topic is what happens with the assignment system? The assignment system is something that I've been familiar with, and I know a lot of people in the community were not so familiar with. The assignment system was a program that was set up for people who had already exhausted their COBRA.
That's right.
And then they were able to provide their certificate, and then they could go on and they could receive a guaranteed carrier, a guaranteed major medical insurance, as long as you were able to pay for your own premiums.
That's right.
Is that going to still be a part of the affordable?
It will be. It'll be a part of that. And I will admit to you, it's an expensive proposition. That's one of the reasons why the ability to establish these healthcare exchanges is so important in the state of Georgia and those adjacent states as well. We've got South Carolina that will potentially play in this process. We have Florida and of course Alabama and Tennessee that will potentially play in this process as well. But COBRA is an expensive proposition. And so when folks look at the ability to pay $1,000 in some cases for insurance by way of COBRA, it becomes that expensive proposition. But through the assignment process, you do have access to that carrier. But as we move forward, I think what's going to be vital is our ability to establish those healthcare exchanges. In fact, in this past legislative session, we had the legislation drafted. We were ready to move forward with that, and the governor took the approach that we would wait and see what happened in the elections and with these things. So we did move forward with that legislation. We have it drafted. We think that it's a good step in the right direction, and hopefully when we go back in 2013, independent of elections, independent of those things, we'll do what's right for the people of Georgia and move forward with that legislation, and it'll give people opportunity that they do not have today.
Tell me about what education means to you and what you've been doing in the Senate regarding it.
Well, one of the mottos that I've lived by is education plus Christ equals success. I think it's important that we create opportunities for people all across Georgia and certainly Augusta to be a part of an educated society. In the legislature, I've certainly been very passionate about education issues and certainly want to see people succeed in Augusta, Richmond County. We have the second largest city in the state of Georgia, school system with roughly 33,000 students in it, which makes it one of the largest school districts in the state. And when you look at our community and what's happened really over the last 10 years from an education perspective, yes, we've seen budget cuts at the state level affect all of the counties in Georgia, but we've seen certainly a direct impact from a budget perspective in our community. While we can attribute many of those things to budget cuts that started before I came to the legislature, I think one of the more meaningful things is that we live in the second largest city, but at the same time, we've had a lot of economic growth, but not necessarily development. A lot of people talk about economic growth, they talk about development rather, But economic growth is the building of new plants and those types of things. But the development is that distribution of wealth that takes place. When you look at that distribution, it could be directly attributed to a person's economic and or education status. And so I think we've got some unique opportunities in the state of Georgia where education is concerned. I think it's important for us to create broader opportunities for people who struggle perhaps in the traditional school setting. I am a product of the public school system. I graduated from Hepzibah High School here, and I'm a strong proponent of public education. But I think that there are those students who do not learn as quickly as others, and so we've got to create opportunities for them. And so I've been working on that in the legislature. We've had some legislation over the last several years that have allowed us to create career academies. Those are what we would call in Augusta magnet schools, but create a broader linkage between individuals who are in our public schools and as they're going from high school to college, but create opportunities for them to get the training and the skills that would allow them to go directly into a technical setting or go into a four-year institution. And so those are things that I've been actively engaged in, and I'm looking for greater opportunities in the year ahead for us to do more where education is concerned.
Okay. So when we speak on the vocational track, you know, here in Augusta, we have some schools that are specifically on the vocational tracks. And my concern and my question is that, you know, how do we make a specific determination of what student goes to what track versus academic versus vocational track?
Sure. Well, you know, I think that's been one of the linchpins that I've heard from not only educators but parents as well, that you've got people who are making those determinations without really having significant input from students and in some cases parents. We have a unique opportunity here in Augusta where we've got 3 of the top rated schools not only in the state of Georgia but also in the country with C.T. Walker, Davidson Fine Arts, and of course A.R. Johnson Health Sciences and Engineering School. And we now have a new school that will come online, and that's the South Augusta Vocational School. That's situated right next to Augusta Technical College. I think we've got to create those types of opportunities in every school and not what we do is typically cherry pick the best and the brightest and provide them with those opportunities. The reality of society is that everyone will not go to a 4-year college. Everyone does not need to go to a 4-year college. And then there are those opportunities where folks can go to a technical school and get the skills that they need in order to provide meaningful lives for themselves and their families. And I think that's what we need to be creating at the K-12 environment. Providing those opportunities. We see the persuasions that people have. Folks gravitate to more of the academic types of environments, and then we see those who have those natural giftings where vocational opportunities. And I think one of the things that we've done is we've siloed individuals to take students in K-12 and we silo them based on their academic potential and or abilities and say, well, you know, I don't think it's appropriate for you to spend time trying to go to a 4-year school. Well, who are we to necessarily make that determination as opposed to providing options to students? And I'm a strong proponent of providing those options at the K-12 arena and allowing the students to determine that themselves. They become the best predictors of the types of lives that they will live if we provide those opportunities. In states outside of Georgia, California for example, where I am very familiar with some of the schools that they have there, they do traditional things like magnet schools with health sciences and or engineering and fine arts. But I think we've got an opportunity here in Georgia and certainly in Augusta to where we can allow students to determine the outcomes themselves by simply saying, here is what's available to you. An example of that would be when you go to a buffet. They have seafood. They have traditional American cuisine. I think if we provide those opportunities from an educational setting, you allow students through their natural giftings, talents, and abilities to determine the outcomes of their lives as opposed to us picking cherry picking and saying, well, I think this is what's good for you, and we put a person in that type of environment. And that's what I want to see in the days ahead. I think in 2013, in the legislative session, as we go back, education will be one of those prominent topics. Okay. I know in 2012, the charter schools conversation was something that was out there. A lot of people were very passionate on both sides of that issue. But at the end of the day, we've got to create a culture in Georgia that provides opportunities for students at all walks of life, and that's something that I am working on and will continue to work on.
Well, this has been a wonderful interview. I think that, I like to sum it up and say, education, healthcare, the various topics at economic development.
Sure.
The bottom line is we need to be able to empower each other. We need to be able to give this person the tools that they need to make it and become successful in whatever success is on your terms, not anyone else's terms. I want to thank Senator Davis for coming. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this interview. This is not the last, because I'm going to have you back.
Thank you for the invitation. I really appreciate it.
So you're welcome. And Augusta, you can get in contact with Senator Davis's office. Feel free to please utilize the phone number, utilize the website, write him a letter, let him know what you need, but also let him know that he's doing an excellent job. So thanks for joining me. And now it's time for your Kim's Corner Food for Your Soul. Senator Hardy Davis will be giving us his food for thought.
In life, we pursue what's perfect, and it becomes the enemy to that which is real. People pursue perfect marriages, perfect careers, perfect homes, all at the expense of developing meaningful relationships and lives in an imperfect world. There are no perfect people, just another perspective on how life can be lived when we develop meaningful relationships and make thoughtful decisions. And so I encourage everyone now, don't allow perfect to become the enemy of your real life.
This program is intended for educational purposes and entertainment only. Any views or opinions expressed and any advice given by the host or guest should not be considered as counseling or therapeutic advice. Please seek medical attention if needed.